And hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Elephant Room podcast with me, Frank Shortle, and Ian Hand. Say hi, Ian.
Hello, everyone.
And Mr. Shane Martin.
Hi. I guess I'll say hi as well. You didn't tell me to, but hello.
We've got a very special episode this week. We have an interview with possibly one of our favourite finds over the last few months, Moon Palace, who hail from Seattle. Not only do we have an interview with them, we also are premiering their new song, Ego Death, which is coming out on February 14th, or Valentine's Day, as you lovers know it. Yeah, we're very excited that they're trusting us to play that on the show here and give it its first spin. So that is to come up. From that interview, what I found most interesting is the single that we're playing and their latest offerings is that they are recording them all now separately while in lockdown. And on this podcast, we have this podcast only exists because of lockdown. We've spoke about the history of music and we've spoke about the future of music post-COVID, but I don't think we've really touched on music during COVID and how it's vastly changed and the processes that bands are adapting to. I think you'll hear in the Moon Palace one, it's very interesting how they have changed their processes and how they are now working under COVID.
I think in particular, you have this big kind of rise in the DIY musician, be it an individual or a band like Moon Palace, where they will record separately, let's say, and in doing so, they pick up these new skills, be it mixing themselves or having a setup to record and coordinating with each other and basically producing themselves more or less, or mixing themselves certainly. I think that as a skill set is something that has come up in this pandemic. And I suppose you're kind of looking at the big recording studios, like where you had the traditional engineer and the producer and that you maybe necessarily won't diminish completely, but certainly you'll see way more of a DIY culture forming out of this. I certainly hope so anyway.
Yeah, there'll always be a need for the big studios for a high fidelity, recording in polished, perfect mixes and things like that, like pop music and stuff. But definitely for independent artists, all this kind of remote working and working from home and recording from home, it's very enticing or something that's very, desirable for somebody to do, is because you get, first of all, a level of control over your art. You can really produce it yourself and mix it yourself and get the sounds that you want. So you're really making something more unique. And then you're also saving money. You're doing it for yourself, and you're keeping it in a budget that is manageable for most independent artists that can't afford to go to a big studio and stuff like that.
I think what's cool about it is what you're saying is the big studios will always exist for the big productions, but even right now is the leeway that everyone has been given with sound or just quality in general. Like even the big American talk show hosts are recording things like on their phone or like just sitting at their sitting room like with a makeshift desk. And for us as fans of lo-fi and kind of bedroom recordings and the quirks and mistakes that you hear when creating something, I love seeing that. I love seeing the KXP from home and the fact that it's kind of dodgy because the internet's a bit dodgy, or they're making mistakes, or they're doing it just beside their, clothes basket. Yeah, it's all a bit just DIY. There's no frills attached, and there's a bit of a leeway to not be really professional now, because I think things were going that way, that even though you have a run-of-the-mill job and you didn't study sound engineering, things had to sound professional or you wouldn't get taken seriously. I love that we can even stand to that with this podcast. There's times where the internet is a bit glitchy or our sound is a bit dodgy because we're doing this over the internet. But people will give us leeway because they go, oh, well, they're doing it during lockdown, so we can't expect this flawless production from them. So I like that. I hope that continues forward. I hope people like the kind of homemade style and that comes forward. I think, as you said there, Ian, a lot of processes that like bands like Moon Palace use, they'll bring that forward in the future and possibly not use a big studio again. It reminds me of a thing I read about studies that they're doing in places like Germany and Israel, where they're doing societal studies where they'll look at the schooling system or working system, and they look at who's benefiting from the system right now, and they'll take that forward when we reach our new normal, and we won't just go back to the old way, because maybe the old way we were doing things wasn't completely right, that we were forced now to change it in a better way. Moving forward, we've learned a few new things, which is pretty cool. Back to the interview at hand here with Moon Palace. Really excited about this because they are, as Ian has recommended before on this podcast, they're thrown into the indie genre, but they really are a thing of their own. And Ian has said it before, he can't put his finger on what they sound like. That's exactly what I got the first time I heard them. They've got like some bass-driven songs, and they've got their really well put together vocal harmonies and their soundscapes, and their productions are very rich and atmospheric, and it all just blends together to create something that I would just call good music rather than just branded as indie. Hearing their processes, Ian discusses in the interview how they started out working singer-songwriter songs into full band songs, and now how they're using more production techniques. I think that's kind of a cool genre change that was caused by the circumstances now. So I think that's something we can come to expect with music during lockdown, as some bands' styles will change because they're not working them out as live bands anymore. They're kind of doing them more as jigsaw pieces.
You know, I think we'll let the interview speak for itself.
Great record.
Excellent album. We learned a lot from
Great
it.
record.
Welcome back. Recently, I've had the absolute pleasure of interviewing one of Seattle's finest indie rock bands, Moon Palace. In the interview, we go through living through the pandemic, how it affects creativity, the release of their new single and upcoming EP, as well as a deep dive into their back catalogue and the formation of the band. So without further ado, I give you Moon Palace. So hey guys, how's things?
Good. Happy Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Sunday there?
It is. It's,
Okay.
it's nearly over. There's like, I think 4 hours left for that.
Yes. Okay.
Good to be with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Congratulations on the single.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fault Lines. Really like it. It's just a synth indie dreamscape extraordinaire.
Yeah.
That's what we're going for.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels good to write some things and have it out there during a pandemic, you know? It's
Absolutely.
pretty good.
Yeah, so it was completely recorded in lockdown, in isolation.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
were you all completely separate, or like were one or two of you together, or?
Well, I have a little recording. This is Carrie. I have a recording set up in my basement, just simple. I was gifted just a simple interface and things like that. So I was able to record a lot of the song. Mainly just started with the bass and vocals. And then I did have Kat. We were trying to figure it out, but because Kat didn't have much of a recording setup. So I did have her come over and do guitar and some backup vocals. And then we were able to send that to Jude and Gabe, and they did their stuff remotely as well.
Yeah, we tried to, this was the real beginning of the pandemic. So
Yeah.
we did try and play together on Zoom.
We did.
It didn't work.
Yeah.
We didn't realize that, because we kept seeing all these bands putting out these really cool Zoom videos, and we didn't realize that they were pre-recording
Yeah.
their parts.
Yeah. There's too much latency delay. So
Oh yeah.
I know there's some software you can get to work it out, but yeah, that was a hard lesson. It was really frustrating.
Yeah. I read a little bit of your blog, Jude, on the actual recording.
Yeah.
And I'm a drummer as well, so I can really empathize.
Yeah.
But in particular, you didn't actually have your physical kit.
No.
But you had your sample pad. If you just want to kind
Right.
of, so you had samples from the last Shadowcast sessions.
Right. Yeah. So I had samples of my drum kit that I just put in my sample pad, and I could use drumsticks on the pad, so it kind of felt in my body a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I just listened to the bass line and the vocals and tried to imagine what it would be like in the future if I had a drum set, and tried to make a beat that I could play, on a full kit. And it did feel, it felt kind of, there was like a sadness to it, but also just really happy to be able to do anything, and that Carrie had inspiration during this time at all. And this, like, just even talking about music, I mean, is bringing us so much joy and fulfillment. Just even sharing tracks and saying, like, I've been listening to this song. Reminds me of this. Let's try to make this. Just getting back into the creative process in any way really helped with my, I think, emotional state during that time.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like in the very beginning, this is Carrie, I was in a little bit of a rut, like, because it was just such a traumatic change in life. And also, like, my son has been out of school for almost a year now, so that was just also shocking to transition into, like, homeschool and all that. But so it took me a minute to actually be in the mood, but I feel like I also knew we weren't going to be playing shows for a long time. So I was like, I need to be doing something. And I kind of forced myself into being creative. And I think it was really good, because once I think it's hard for people to do that when they're depressed or just, overwhelmed. But I think I really tried to kind of use it as like a meditation to get away from all the stressful things that were happening. And I've been super creative during this process. I've been way more prolific in my songwriting, actually. So it's like, it's been a good outlet.
And like the actual, just like you touched on it there, that you've actually been very prolific with your writing. Like during this, the actual several, well, we have had several lockdowns and kind of like little bits of reprieve, but it just comes back worse and worse, But one thing in particular, about the kind of this new kind of way of how you recorded this single, is there anything in terms of the creative process that, like, obviously it is inherently different, but is there anything from the creative process that you might actually bring forward, even post pandemic, that you might have discovered?
I think so. I mean, in a way, I feel like you can do a lot remotely, and I think bands already do that. There's some bands that, where some of the members live in separate cities and they collaborate and send files back. But I think in a way it makes you feel like there's more of a do-it-yourself kind of vibe of recording, where it's collaborative and we can just send things back and forth. And it doesn't mean you have to go book out a whole recording studio and be there for a week. I don't know. I mean, there's benefits to that. I miss that too. And it's nice to be in a studio, but there's also, it can be more approachable sometimes to just do it on your own time, like when you can get to it and when you're in the right mindset. And it could be also more low budget, which
definitely
is nice.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Definitely.
I feel like I'll be bringing forward more patience through the recording process, because this is just taking a little bit longer, and it gives you more time to sit with the song and send it back and forth. And there's really there's no rush in getting it out. There's no deadline. Like what we're doing this time is just, we're not making a deadline for ourselves. There's no goal. There's no tour. It's just put it out in how you feel like you want to.
I do think like there's the pressure somewhat off of like all the other elements of being in a band, scheduling all the shows, and that takes up when you're independent band, it takes up an enormous amount of your bandwidth to organize all that and try to meet these deadlines. And now we're just like, well, that's not happening. Let's just do it when we're ready,
I think you get into a rhythm of just like playing, practicing to play prepare for shows. And like, oh, we got this big show coming up, we're going to practice for that. So having the time to actually just work on new music has been really nice.
Oh, absolutely. But so I just thought I'll just roll back a little bit to kind of when you kind of started, Moon Palace, and basically the kind of groundwork beforehand as musicians and that. So I know this has definitely been a defining factor for, I'm sure, all of your lives, Kat and Carrie, that, you know, you came from parents who were deaf. So obviously you formed quite a bond together musically.
Yes.
Yeah.
In particular, I read in an interview you gave with the Northwest music scene that a lot of you, like your early kind of influences on music were your grandparents and then your older sister, Molly.
Yeah, we didn't have a ton of music in our house. If it wasn't just my grandparents playing, you know, their either classical or what would you even call it? Oldies.
Yeah, kind of oldies. We were pretty like, it was weird because we split our time living with our grandparents and then would go to our mom's house on the weekend. And we were really restricted in what we could listen to at our grandparents' house. But then when we got to our mom's house, we were kind of free to listen to whatever we wanted. But we were pretty like sheltered for a bit. But so whenever we heard pop music, whether it's like our uncles, we would sometimes hear pop music from like our uncles and aunts. And we were just like, whoa, what was that? I just always remember just being so into it from a young age and like wanting to be a singer from such a young age.
Our older sister too would sometimes sneak the radio on in the middle of the night, you know, when we were at our grandparents, and that was like the first time I really heard, you know, what was being played on the hit stations and things like that. But
Yeah.
I think that's why we just like gravitated so much to it, because it was just like this thing we weren't always exposed to.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
The tween years, I got like super obsessed with Nirvana.
Nice.
Yes.
And I was just like begging my parents for a guitar for years, and they
didn't get it. They're like,
I
why?
know, which makes me a little mad sometimes when I think about it. I'm like, what if they had actually given me a guitar at like 11 when I wanted it, you know? But I finally convinced them to get me one, and then from there it was like all I did was just be in the room learning every single Nirvana and whole song.
Yeah.
And then eventually starting to write my own songs. And Carrie learned how to play the bass.
Yeah.
So we kind of like played songs together.
Yeah, Kat was always the singer. I kind of just like played bass with her, and I didn't really find my voice until I was like, you know, I guess I like 19 or something.
Yeah. A real defining feature I find anyway with yourselves and anyone I show used to are your harmonies. Your vocal harmonies are just flawless. Absolutely flawless.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
How did you go about kind of perfecting the harmonies basically? Like, did it just come to you, or do you put in a lot of work, or does it come from those early days, you know, when you were children? Or
I think it's kind of like both like, we just have different ranges, vocal ranges. Like Carrie has like a lower range and I have a higher range. And I think once we kind of decided to play music together, because for a while we were kind of going separate ways and pursuing our own music careers. And once we started singing together, we're like, wow, our voices work really well together.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the music we listen to, a lot of the music I love, there's incredible harmonies. So it just developed an ear for it. And I think for a long time I was releasing solo music under my name, and often in that process I would be harmonizing with my own voice. You know, you develop an ear for how to make harmonies just when you have like your line that you wrote, but then you're also singing against yourself. And so I think it's when Kat and I didn't start getting back together to start playing until like much later, like in our 30s.
Right.
Because I think we were just too competitive.
We were, yeah.
And so in a way, coming back together, I think we each had developed our own singing style and also had been in other projects where we learned to harmonize. So it just happened naturally. I feel like
it did happen naturally.
Yeah.
I feel like we don't have to work on it super hard. Like there's like a naturalness to it. Maybe occasionally there'll be like a difficult harmony to hear, That's my cat meowing at me.
We do have our voices just sit in the natural places with each other, so it works. Every now and then, like I write a higher part, and I'm like, Kat, you should actually sing that part, or she'll write a lower part that's a strain for her, and then she'll give it to me. So we work in that way too.
Yeah. Definitely. And then just a question just for Jude then. In terms of how did Jude start playing with you guys? Was it
I had been playing in a different group called Tenderfoot, and we were playing the same show that Kat was performing at. And I don't know how, but we just became like interested in each other, I think. And we both liked each other's musical acts. And I think Kat was looking for a drummer because she just wrote that first album and just had it kind of like sitting on it and wanted to make it more of a full band. And she asked me to be the drummer, and I happily accepted. I was really excited to join the team and, fill out the sound. So it kind of happened at a show at a place called Repair Revolution, which is a queer-owned car repair shop.
Cool.
We did a show in, which was pretty rad.
So cool.
I was playing like shows with our friend Darcy, who played cello in the band for years, or a few years, and that was kind of like a way back into performing music again, because I was in a band for many years called Lucy Bland, and then after that band kind of dissipated, I really didn't play much music. And then Darcy and I started playing music for a little, just like for friends and things like that. And it was just her on the cello and me on like acoustic guitar, vocals. But I had like over the years written like almost an album's worth of songs. So I was just like, I eventually will put this out. And so I finally just was like, okay, now's the time. I gotta put a record out. And that's when I talked to Carrie about like, would you want to be in a band together? And then also reached out to Jude. She was kind of like my dream drummer in my mind of like, oh my God, I'd be so pumped if she'd be interested in playing. And at first I remember being like, am I going to have to pay her to play on the album? And she's going to be like a studio musician.
Oh my God.
I think once we all started playing together, there was just like an automatic like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, definitely, because I think that brings you on nicely to when I first experienced you guys as a band was just before we got Barrett Jones on. We were interviewing Barrett Jones. So I was going through his Laundry Room sessions on YouTube, and I came across you guys doing Shapeshifter. I was just completely
rockin' song,
completely blown away. Honest to God, like completely blown away. And like, I think there comes a point with, especially in indie, where it can be quite similar sounding, and not that people get stuck in a rut or anything, but it sounds quite similar. But I genuinely could not put my finger on Shapeshifter. Like, it didn't sound like anything I ever heard before.
Cool.
It's just incredibly original, and as you just said there, with the kind of energy of playing as a band, that was so evident. I mean, Jude hitting the skins, and it's just
that was one of our favorite. That's always like the last song we play at the show.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, it feels like our powerhouse song. We like. We once played a show in an Irish pub, for this thing called Tree Fort Fest. And we weren't sure of the crowd because they looked pretty like old bikers. Like everyone was like, we're not sure if they're going to like us. But then when we played Shapeshifter, it was like, they felt like we tore that roof off that place.
Oh my God, they loved it. It was just like,
It's just about that album, your first album. Obviously, as I just said there, like, I mean, it's such a unique, original sounding album. Like, okay, I suppose it's under the umbrella of indie, but you have the whole ambient, atmospheric, dreamscape. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And obviously, you could see a lot of kind of influences with landscape. Like a lot of themes there. The Desert of Devotion, Canyon. They're absolutely brilliant songs. But I saw it was produced
Thank
by,
you.
no, absolutely. It's produced by Aaron C. Schroeder. And I came across a really good quote on his LinkedIn, just about his kind of style. And I just wondered, like, did it come into this album? Because, anyway, I'll just say what he said. It's brilliance doesn't come when called. It slips through the side door when nobody's looking.
Mm.
And
Oh, nice.
Wow.
yeah, and when I read that,
Nice, Aaron.
yeah,
He said that?
yeah.
So wise, Aaron.
But,
It's true. It slipped right through the side door.
It did.
Yeah, totally.
well, that's
Because
it.
we were still really developing so much of the sound, going into the studio. So, but he's like a kind of a genius into tapping into those elements, as we described what we wanted to go for, like that kind of the nature and environmental kind of sounds. He just was so good at getting trippy with us.
Yeah,
He
like
can
a
really
desert,
go there.
I wanted it like a desert kind of psychedelic, or like driving at nighttime vibe.
Definitely. Oh, 100%. I read as well that you recorded it over like several kind of studios and stuff. I think Aaron was on the move at the time.
Yeah, he was moving his studio. Yeah, so we were at Hall of Justice, which is the
Death Cab for Cutie.
Yeah, is it Ben Gibbard or
Chris
Death
Walla.
Cab? Chris Walla. Let's get it right, George. Chris Walla. His studio, and then Avast. Yeah,
Avast.
Those are
Recordings
both
real
like
fancy.
really nice studios in Seattle that like all sorts of like huge bands have played. We're just like floored to be able to record at those spaces.
Oh yeah.
We were starstruck. I would say I was starstruck.
Yeah.
We did record a lot with Aaron, at his place sometimes too. Like we would, kind of break it up. But Hall of Justice also felt like very cozy as well, like being at home.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good vibe there.
Like the first album in particular, it just sounds like such a fantastic collection of songs, basically, like various different, roughly the same kind of style, but some are quite different to the next, like I absolutely love that little kind of lovely little instrumental interlude as Advantage.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's such a gorgeous little piece. Like I think it's only 17 seconds, but it's so nice. But the likes of that, like did that just kind of come to you in the studio, or did you have that prepared?
Yeah, let's see. I think a lot of the songs were like singer came from like a more singer-songwriter background, and then Carrie also had some songs, Desert of Devotion she wrote, and then I think some of it was just like sounds that we made in the studio, just
an idea that like you didn't know if it should be a full song kind of thing, or just like this pretty instrumental that just kind of took off.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have a lot of space on it. But yeah, I do think like a lot of songs were, because Kat had written them as a singer-songwriter, and with Darcy playing cello, they had that element. And when I hadn't even really been writing much music for a long time. When I joined, I was in like just that kind of a little bit of a rut, and didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I had, a baby and everything. And I was just like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to do something. So it was kind of a perfect opportunity to start playing music again. And once you just get around music, it's just like, oh, wow, I'm able to write songs again, So it became like the catalyst of writing songs for me. But
The Vantage.
But anyway,
interlude.
back to Vantage.
That was when that was the first time Gabe, he wasn't in the band yet, but we really liked his keys. And we kind of like just had a big crush on Gabe, and we're like, how do we get Gabe in the band?
Yeah.
Maybe we're like somehow managed to entice him to come on just for some little interludes, or, maybe just add a little synth here and there. And so he did. And that's one of the little interludes he just played. We kind of didn't know if it would be an intro to a song or what, but we're glad we got him in the studio and he got on there, and then it did blossom into him becoming a band member later.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's really good.
They added a ton. That was really cool. They just came in, and we were like, I knew that we would want to play with them eventually. I feel like, you know.
Yeah, no, because I just think that that kind of those little interludes and intros and stuff, you know, like it makes for such an interesting album, you know. Because I remember when I first listened to, like, God, I'm going to sound like such a bloody fanboy now, but like when I first listened to the first album, you know, I went to your Bandcamp page and I was like, oh, I really hope they have it on vinyl, but alas, I couldn't find it on vinyl.
Yeah, maybe we should release it on vinyl one of these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that leads me on then to your most recent album back in 2019, Shadowcast. This was also produced by Aaron?
Yeah.
Yes. And was it was in his new kind of permanent place now, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is basically in his house, and it's really in his basement. It's really cozy.
Yeah. Because one thing I did notice about the second album, it sounds more polished or a little bit tighter than the first, but without losing that nice kind of dream soundscape that you have in the first, you know. And I was just wondering, because you're in a kind of one place, you know, like a permanent kind of studio place, and rather than moving around, did that help?
I think it was more like we had developed our sound together as a band.
Okay, yeah.
And it was just like and we had performed a lot of the songs out, so we were just a bit tighter.
Yeah, because we were still when the first album came, we were still really new and still developing our sound, and I think that by the second album we really had established our sound. And just we had been playing together longer, and when you start playing live shows with other people, you just start to kind of lock it down more. But I do think like possibly being at Aaron's house too, and it just feels very relaxed, and like you could kind of experiment a lot there and not worry about the time and money, you know, just the way he charges things. But it's like you just have like a long weekend there, and
nice.
I do think being there and just being in one place possibly could have helped, just sitting down and experimenting with different sounds, and especially guitar. I feel like Kat had a lot of time to mess around with the sound, and Aaron spent so much time getting weird on the guitar and on the drums too. I feel like he spent a lot of time getting the sounds of the drums and doing new things.
I think we had intentionality, right? Like we were intentionally trying to be more polished in a way that like we were hoping we could get some radio play, and like we paid for PR for that album, and we were trying to maybe make it sound, we were just purposefully trying to be more polished, I think, on that one.
Yeah.
Totally.
No, absolutely. And I think, again, as I said, in kind of best possible way, you did come across polished and tight, but you still had that excellent kind of dreamscape that you had with the first. So it's nice to see that that didn't go, like it's still a very unique sounding album, But in particular, I think like the lyrics throughout the album, I think they're incredibly kind of contemplative, kind of nearly like a looking inward nearly, before you can look out.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's a testament to you. It's really, really good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a few songs too in there that they were just some ideas that we brought into the studio, like Carrie's on characters.
Yeah.
Which is like a bass riff.
Love it.
And that was
built
in the studio. It's one of my favorite songs too. It's one that we like open our shows with a lot just because it has such a cool vibe to it. So there was a few songs that we created in the studio, which was really fun to do.
Yeah. I think like 3 songs in particular, and they're one after the other on that album, and I think they flow so well into each other, just both in terms of the theme and that absolute killer bass. So you've Gamma Ray, Who You Are, and Characters. Oh, I absolutely love those trio,
Yeah, I mean, I think I also just became a more solid bass player, but also it was new for me to write songs on bass. So I think in a way, those 3 songs I wrote on bass, and so they become this driving thing, and it works well at our shows. Like a lot of times we can go into the next song pretty easily, and just with the bass still driving it,
Yeah, because I think between yourself and Jude, you really lock in like the drums and bass and rhythm section. It's fantastic.
It's so fun. Yeah, I've learned a lot about that. Just playing with Jude is really nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited about like the new stuff we're producing with Gabe
Yeah.
as well, like the synth stuff. Just that just brings another really exciting element to it, but it still has like a lot of space in the music.
Yeah.
Like Gabe is really good at creating dynamics into a song, and we can get some more of those different like 80s gothy synth sounds sometimes. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember
Wait till
when-
you hear the new single we have. It's got like
yeah,
quite the like. Is it 80s gothy?
Oh, nice. Nice.
yeah, it's got like a Susie and the Banshees kind of vibe.
Oh, very cool.
Yes. It's gonna be cool.
We're gonna be releasing that soon.
This is Ego Death.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ego Death, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when I saw that you released the new single and the start of the month, I thought, oh, cool, excellent, new Moon Palace. So I stuck it on, and when I heard the synth at the start, I just thought, wow, this is like like Wendy Carlos, like kind of
Yes.
late 70s, switched on back, I absolutely love that album. But anyway, yeah, it's the synth is fantastic. It's a nice direction,
Yeah, I hope so. I think we like have been kind of we had a little bit of synth on the last one, and we've just wanted to kind of build on that a little, play around with it, go into some new directions.
No, definitely, it's really cool. I saw just after you're kind of in between, obviously, but when you released Shadowcast, and then the dreaded pandemic hit last year. But in between that, you kind of went on a West Coast tour.
Yeah.
So was that quite intense, or?
That was so much fun. We just went down to through in Portland, played a show, and then a couple of spots in California and San Francisco. Where else did we play?
Well, it was just a
So
small
long.
little thing. We had
Yeah.
more, things booked to go before the pandemic. We had a lot more out of towners. We tended to just do a lot of kind of one-offs instead of driving straight through.
Yeah.
Because we had a show we were supposed to play in Florida or a couple shows in Florida. That's just been our style more, is to kind of fly out to places.
Yeah.
Instead of piling into a van and driving down. But we did drive down to San Francisco and back up. That was really fun.
Nice.
I think that was my favorite show. We played with the Homobiles in San Francisco, which was like a super honor because it was my kind of like, I loved Tribe 8 as a child and as a teen. And Lynn Breedlove was the band.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like my teenage dream to play with that band. And we got a picture together, and it was like really dorky and cute.
That was like the funnest show ever too.
That was so fun.
It just felt like this big community event, and there were some people making a documentary there. So there was kind of like a fake band, I guess. Like, what would you call it? It was like a mockumentary kind of thing,
Right.
but ended up being so great because it
was
brought
a Riot
out so
Girl.
many people. Yeah.
And we all were in Halloween costumes.
Yeah.
So, because it was like right before Halloween.
Yeah.
That was so fun. Yeah, we were supposed to play Treat for Music Festival,
Yeah.
which we were so excited for.
In Idaho, yeah.
Yeah, we had like a bunch of shows that we had planned in a row. So it was really a bummer to have to cancel those.
Yeah. No, it's awful. I just want to ask you guys about the kind of general scene in Seattle now during the pandemic. So just to kind of set the kind of context, I know here in Ireland, in Dublin and elsewhere during the pandemic, a lot of venues, let's say, have just completely shut up shop. And they're not even getting into live streaming or anything. They've just closed, and it's very much kind of back on the artists now to set up the streams and do their live streams. And I was just wondering, like I think KXP have a KXP at home thing that they do, which is it's really cool. It's good, but I'm just wondering in general in kind of Seattle and the Northwest.
Yeah,
is it kind of back on the artist to stream, or are there venues?
It is a little bit like most of the venues, pretty much all the venues are closed.
Yeah.
but they might occasionally host. We've seen a few people do some live streams from there.
Yeah, there's a couple that are doing pretty steady live streams, but most of them are shut down and aren't operating. It's really depressing, you know.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, I do think a lot of artists are organizing their own from home live streams. It seems like there's a lot of productions put on by, you know, I don't know, companies or promoters that are organizing kind of a lineup of live streams. Like I've been seeing, like some of my other musician friends will be a part of like a live stream tonight where it's like a bunch of singer-songwriters or a lot of bands. So there are promoters still organizing the live streams, but they're still like performing from home.
Okay.
But it's like all part of a showcase. I've been seeing a lot of that. And we actually got asked to be a part of like a showcase within the numbers. And we were going to actually go to this live stream place
Big
to
buildings.
do it. Big buildings. And they had been doing some really cool stuff, but then it got canceled because the numbers started spiking again. So that kind of ended.
Yeah, we actually just got asked to play on the lawn, Joan in the Morning, on KXP, which we're just so excited about.
Excellent.
That's definitely been like a huge bucket list. Carrie's played on the morning show with John Richards and like her solo career,
amazing.
but it's definitely been like a huge dream of mine to be on there.
But we're going to be playing on his front lawn because that's what he's been doing. Like he's been doing cool. Like the lawn in the morning. He's been setting up, like a lot of times it's a singer-songwriters, but there have been some bands that come and just play on his lawn. And he literally just opens up his window from where he's broadcasting from home, and he interviews the band like outside of his window. So
that's so cool.
That's funny.
We were joking that this is like, it's funny because it's our first show in like so long, and it's going to be on KXP, which is kind of not a bad way to go.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. The first show we play in a year is like kind of like a big deal show.
Oh, that's
like
amazing.
we're like, oh my God.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's coming up in February sometime. We're just waiting on the date and super excited. Gonna practice.
Yeah, you gotta practice.
We luckily have a giant warehouse space we can practice in and be like 20 feet apart.
Oh, nice.
Initially, that was the thing that made it hard for us to get together. Was we had been practicing at Kat's house in a small room, and it just wasn't going to work for all of us to be crammed in there. So Gabe was able to get us into this larger warehouse. So we're pretty lucky.
Which is kind of the transition to how we're working with our new producer, Timothy Robert Graham.
Yeah.
Also works in that space and listened to us, as we were practicing a little bit, and is a good friend of Gabe, and it just kind of is falling into place that we're working together to record, and it's really an awesome new process going on.
Sounds like such an exciting time.
It's just nice to have things just feel fluid, and like we're just like, it's not a ton of effort. We're just kind of going with it.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
It feels good though.
It's organic.
It's a nice one.
Exactly.
That's really cool. So you're just obviously Fault Lines, and then the upcoming Ego Death second single. That's going to be from an EP.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah. So is there a kind of general release date or?
No.
No. Yeah, it's just basically we're kind of keeping it very like light and fluid of like just putting out a few songs here and there, and then I think we will combine them into an EP. But I think we're just enjoying keeping it really light. We'll set a date as like a goal to try to hit. I think Ego Death, we said Valentine's Day maybe.
Yeah,
that would be good. But I think right now it's like it's okay in the industry to just kind of just release a lot of singles. You know? And then it seems to be a good way to keep going through this whole pandemic too. So I think eventually we will set a date for our EP once we're closer.
Yeah, no, as you said, there's no rush.
Yes.
It's hard to live up to your own deadlines in this kind of pandemic with like, I don't know about you, but I've been experiencing a little anxiety with it. And like sometimes when we put deadlines on and then it's like, oh, the numbers are up, and it's just like, okay, we just have to do this one step at a time. Let's get this song out, and then once Ego Death is out, I think we'll probably practice again for our next song, and then record that one, and it's really just like one step at a time.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's the right way to look at it. So just before I let you go, we kind of do this small kind of little game with our various interviewees. So this is a variant on it. So it's more a question really, but it's fun to see what your answers will be. So you can answer it whatever way you want. You know, if all three of you want to answer it separately. But so the game is called Cover or Collaborate. Okay.
Ooh.
So basically, it's going to be two artists, and the whole idea is it someone you'd like to collaborate? You know, if you had the chance, or would you just go, yeah, I'll cover them, but wouldn't necessarily like to collaborate?
Ooh.
So considering that your one of your two biggest influences, from what I could see and what you just said earlier on, was Nirvana and Hole.
Oh my God.
So I'm going to say cover, collaborate, Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love.
I know my answer, but
well, if we
go for it.
Yeah, start with you, Carrie.
Go for it. Start with you.
I think I would definitely collaborate with Nirvana if they would have me. But I would cover Hole because I feel like Courtney Love would be really challenging to work with. But we actually did cover a whole song, so done and done.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah. I had the same answer. Oh God, no. I'm just like, collaborate with Nirvana. Mainly I just want to hang out with all of them.
That's cool too.
I would spin the roll the dice and collaborate with Courtney.
Yeah.
Nice.
Why not? I'm in for a good ride.
That's cool. So we'll just we'll knock up an old time machine and we'll try and get that going.
Thank you.
Listen, guys, you're absolutely a pleasure to interview, and it was great having
you.
you.
Yeah,
look forward to following your journey with this podcast series. It's really cool that you're doing this. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for reaching out.
Thanks very much.
Across the pond.
Thank you.
Hopefully someday we can come play over there. We would love that.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah, we would love to. I mean, once the travel ban's lifted and all.
Yeah. Hypothetically, later on.
Anyway.
Cool. Yeah. So listen, best of luck with the rest of the EP. I hope it goes well.
Thank you.
And I can't wait for Ego Death.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us on.
Yeah, no worries. And sure, enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully the rain will stop.
Yeah. Doubtful. All right.
Listen.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
All right.
Best of luck.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Good luck.
Take care.
Call it
And we're back. So you've just listened to the absolutely amazing Moon Palace. They were an absolute pleasure to interview, and such incredibly original, as you said, Frank, beforehand, just cool music. You can't really put your finger on it. It's not completely indie, or it's just a fantastic mix of originality. And we just heard their latest single there at the very end as well, Ego Death. I think it's a real nice ode to Susie and the Banshees, kind of new wave post-punk feel to it. But their very last single before that, Fault Lines, which was very synth driven, and now you have Ego Death, which is kind of a new wave feel. Their kind of back catalogue, their previous two albums, would be a little bit more in the traditional kind of alt sphere, I guess. But yeah, really go check them out. These two singles are fantastic, but really have a look at their back catalogue, because they're just an incredibly original band. And that is my recommends.
Yeah, I'd be the same. Part of my recommends would definitely be to just listen to Moon Palace and keep an eye out on February 14th for that Ego Death single coming out. But my recommends is another person who we've recommended before on the podcast, would be an artist called Kynsy. Just released an EP called Things That Don't Exist, which comprises of two previous singles that she has released called Cold Blue Light and Happiness Isn't a Fixed State. The new songs on it are great. There's two brand new ones, and one called Dog Videos, which is just a great blender of genres. Like, it kind of got this like hip hop spring to it with the sample kind of keys and the drums and the bass, and it is just like really bouncy. And then the really strong melodies. Like, she writes very good vocal melodies. And then the other song, which she just released a video for the same day that the EP came out, which we have to kind of promote. It's called Elephant in the Room. So but that's another fantastic song. Video is very good. Check that out on YouTube. But I couldn't recommend Kynsy more. It's just really, really well put together songs. And she's Irish. She's from Ireland. And as I'm saying, that isn't a defining factor to her, is the fact that she's Irish. It's the fact that it's really good music, and she just so happens to be Irish, which I think is a good thing, rather than just listening to someone because they're Irish for some patriotic obligation. Yeah, definitely check Kynsy out. My other recommendation is music / documentary is a series called Fishing with John. John Lurie is the John being mentioned here. It was released, I think, in 96, but it was all recorded in 90, 91, 92. Basically, jazz musician John Lurie, who does soundtrack work. He started the Lounge Lizards jazz group. He's just a very renowned musician and instrumentalist. But he basically goes on these surreal fishing trips with the likes of Tom Waits, Dennis Hopper, Matt Dillon, Jim Jarmusch. Yeah, it's just hilarious. It's like Adult Swim before Adult Swim. It's like really surreal humor. The narration is just bizarre, and it's just really well done. But the music is all done by John Lurie as well. Yeah, it's like weird jazz improv with like world beats and world music in the background. But it's just so interesting. And I was really happy to find out after watching it that he's releasing an HBO show called Painting with John, which is just coming out, which I'm sure is going to be just as strange as bizarre. He has a really good sense of humor, and he's also just incredibly talented. So I'm looking forward to that. Shane, what do you got for us?
This week, I am recommending two songs from Grandaddy. I think he's released them as like a double A side, but it's called 2020's Over Covers is the name of this release, 2020's Over. And it's two covers, kind of slowed down piano versions of Fox in the Snow by Belle and Sebastian and In My Room by the Beach Boys. So like it's just like a real kind of, well, it's very simply put forward. It's just vocal and piano, and it's just really beautifully played and sung. But they're kind of a real nice kind of somber tone, which I don't think many people would have difficulty tapping into at the moment to get in the mood for listening to these songs. But so they're just kind of his farewell to 2020. About the cover, of In My Room, he had this to say about it. So, for anyone who claims introversion as a primary characteristic and has found themselves in some sort of career that requires communicating in public, this Beach Boys song is yours. Also, scarily fitting for just being anyone out there in the year of 2020. So, yeah, so go listen to Grandaddy.
I will, because Grandaddy is an OG, and I haven't heard those. So I actually will go look those up, because Grandaddy is someone I really like but don't actually listen to as much as I'd like to. I think we're good to wrap this up, are we?
Yeah, I feel good. Ian, how do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd just like to say thanks again to Moon Palace for the interview. Absolute pleasure, and really do check them out, guys. I think they're really up and coming, and you're going to see great things from them in the near future.
Yeah, thanks a million for that interview. They're also like really, really nice people, which is always a plus with nice musicians. But yeah, I think we're good to wrap up. Once again, if you have any questions or requests or anything like that after listening, just find us on Instagram. We are always there, willing to talk to you and answer questions and stuff like that. So if you have requests for people we should interview or topics we should talk about, just give us a message on that, or personally phone Shane Martin. He's always willing to take a phone call off a stranger.
Yeah, I'll answer any random number that comes up on my phone, because it's an opportunity to make a friend.
Yeah, exactly. The pen pal system in the digital age.
Yeah, I like to take a gamble.
Okay, guys, I think we're good to go. Ian, I will see you again.
And I will see you again, Frank, and you too, Shane.
Oh,
goodbye and good night.